Should have it now. Yep. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming, and welcome to CocoaHeads for June 2026. To begin with, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, traditional custodians of the land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'll do a few minutes of housekeeping, and then we'll get stuck into the presentations. So, hello, good evening. I'm Zach, and along with Christian, we run CocoaHeads, so thank you for coming. A reminder that there's a code of conduct that applies to this event. You can read it in full on the website, but the key ideas are to be respectful, be inclusive, and be aware of fellow attendees. If there's any issues or concerns related to this, again, please come and speak to Christian or myself. And we have a new requirement. Yes?
Who's Zach and Christian?
Me and Christian. Yep. Sorry. Sorry, yeah, it was on the earlier slide, but yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yes. So new requirement, we're obviously in this awesome new office space, so thank you to Baloo, but we have a new requirement to sign in. So I put the QR code up here, but there's also a couple of QR codes around the office. We'll just ask that you get to the habit on your way in for future events especially. But yeah, it is there for now. And on that note, a massive thank you to our two sponsors for this evening. So there's Baloo and Procreate. Obviously without them, we couldn't run the events. We are here in Baloo's office. Yeah, give it up for Baloo. And also Procreate, who help with our ongoing costs and expenses related to the meetup. So thank you to both of them. A message from Procreate, their Sydney office is now open. If you remember, over the last few months, I've been talking about the fact that they're hiring and opening a Sydney office. I believe they're still hiring. I checked earlier this week, and their careers page still has a few job openings for Sydney. So if you are looking for work, I'd recommend heading to procreate.com/careers and sending in an application if it looks interesting. For those who don't know, we have a Slack community. You can scan that QR code to join. It's a place to hang out throughout the month with fellow CocoaHeads attendees. It's not just people from Sydney. I've got people from Melbourne, all over Australia as well, and a few interesting channels that might be of interest. There's general, there's jobs if you're looking for work, Swift for programming related things, and obviously Sydney related to us. It's usually just where I post information about the next meetup. A reminder that we are on YouTube tonight. We've got a couple of cameras going. Just be aware of that. And yeah. Welcome first-time attendees. Anyone attending for the first time? Show of hands. Yeah, round of applause. Thank you for coming. Hope you enjoy. You picked a good month to come, being WWDC and everything. So yeah, we hope you enjoy. And some other events to keep an eye out for. There's Melbourne CocoaHeads and also Brisbane CocoaHeads. So if you like what you see here tonight, both Melbourne and Brisbane groups do a similar thing. Melbourne run on the second Thursday of the month, and generally they have a YouTube live stream as well, like us. And then Brisbane tend to run on the third Thursday as well, so they clash with us, but you can catch their meetups on on YouTube if you're interested in watching after the fact. And in more event news, the DevWorld conference is going on tour. Some of you might be familiar with DevWorld. It's really Australia's, I think, only iOS conference. It typically takes place in Melbourne, but they're bringing an event to Sydney this year, which is quite exciting. So it's something that's happening at the National Maritime Museum in Sydney early next month, 2nd and 3rd of July. And it's got a focus on the WWDC announcement. So it's very specifically focused on that, whereas the normal DevWorld is kind of anything Swift and Apple related. It's organised by the same group who do the main DevWorld, as well as Procreate being a major sponsor. And yeah, it is worth noting if you're thinking about attending, it's separate to the DevWorld event that happens in Melbourne. Here's the presenter list so far. You might recognise a few of these faces from other CocoaHeads events that you've attended this year or even in past years, and also other DevWorld events if you've attended them. So a few familiar faces in there. It's good to see. And then speaking of DevWorld itself, the main event, that one's happening in Melbourne again at the end of August. I think it's the 27th and 28th. And they're currently looking for speakers. So if you're interested in presenting, definitely check out their website and consider submitting a talk. Tickets aren't on sale for the main DevWorld just yet, but I should have mentioned the on-tour DevWorld does have tickets available on the website. So if you're interested in that, you can jump to ontour.devworld.com, .au, and buy the tickets. It's easier to Google it. Okay. Anyone hiring or looking for work and want to give a quick plug? Yeah.
I'm looking for solution architects to join. We're banking as a service company from the UK, and we're building 2 banks at the moment. And we need solution architects who are comfortable in front of clients and building interesting technical solutions. Yes, if you're interested, do a Google for engine by Starling, or just do that chat to me.
Cool. Thank you. Anyone else? Nope. All right. Well, there is also that jobs channel on Slack, so don't forget about that. Okay, and looking ahead to next month, our next event will be here on the 16th of July. I'll post details on Meetup close to the event, of course. But we are looking for speakers really for July onward through to the end of the year. So if you're interested in presenting at a CocoaHeads, please come and speak to me, and we can make that happen. And if you're not sure, the best way to submit a talk is on the CocoaHeads website. There's a URL up there. It's sydneycocoaheads.com/submit-a-talk. Or you can scan that QR code, or you can come and talk to Christian or myself, or send us a message, however you'd like. Myself, Christian. Yeah.
I might do a little shout out to another meetup.
Yeah.
Might be a bit crossover here, but the Sydney Augmented Reality meetup is next week. It's really cool. There's some visual pro stuff, that kind of thing. I think it's going to be held at the onset. Sometimes you get some Irish guys over there as well because of the vision pro. So it's quite interesting.
Nice, cool. Well, thanks, Kamal. Yeah, and tonight's schedule, first up we have a WWDC In review by Peter. Should be very good. And then we've got a panel discussion to talk about all things WWDC. So that'll be Peter, Christian, and Sergio. And there'll also be opportunities for the audience to ask questions and things like that for the panel. So looking forward to both of them. We hope you enjoy. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Peter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stop it. Okay.
Need your iPad. Sorry, I moved it. Oh, gosh.
For the people online, you missed the best jokes of the night, but we'll just carry on like nothing happened. Okay, WWDC, this is the biggest week of the year. This is the excitement of being a developer on the Apple platform. This is the week we all look forward to, finding out what Apple's been working on the whole time, what new APIs we can take advantage of, and what sort of new whizzy things we're able to do. This year it came around pretty quick. Here we go. Let's get started. I forget how we go. I've been playing this game for a little bit. I was there back when the Apple Park, the gardens were there. We went in San Francisco for a few times, and San Jose, and more recently, of course, since COVID, we've been sitting at home watching it with our feet up, or if you're lucky enough to have a headset, you can watch it anywhere you like. But have some of you got to WWDC before? A few hands. Yep, it's a very exciting thing to do, and it's fun to be part of it.
And screenshots from Apple Incorporated's Worldwide Developers Conference, WWDC. All original content is the copyright of Apple Incorporated. These materials are used under the principles of fair use for educational, commentary, and community discussion purposes. This presentation is not affiliated with or endorsed by Apple Incorporated.
Yeah, basically it's just saying Apple own all the pictures, I own the remote, and so I'm going to press the button. We're going to see why it is we got up at this time and what we learned. Now, the conferences now are a really fantastic selection of videos that get released every year. There's more than 100 of them, and they're all available inside the developer app, either on your phone, iPad, Apple TV, Vision Pro. They're all over the place. Really encourage you to use this. It's a great way to keep track of what you've seen, and what's awesome is that they have a complete transcript of every session. So when you're looking for something, I have tried to put references into all the sessions that I'm going to be referring to, but if you just search for the keyword in the transcripts, you can find it. It's just pretty much anything. It's super cool. So I've got a bit of an agenda. We're going to be talking about the keynote. Then we're going to be looking in more depth material that's really across all the other sessions. We're not going to really focus much on the keynote at all. We're going to be looking at code. We're all nerds and we're more happy with seeing slides with a bit of code on it. The keynote is more sort of almost user focused, and there's a lot of press there, and we want to get our hands a little bit dirty. I've got my sleeves rolled up, ready to go. We're going to talk about foundation models because they're just awesome. We're going to talk about spatial computing because it's not dead, and I think it's pretty awesome. And frameworks, there's some odds and sods, and calling out a number of things that you might not have spotted if you haven't watched all the sessions. And for the last, I don't know how many years, I watch every damn session. I haven't watched them all this year. But over the weekend, I put the stuff together. Now, did everyone has seen the keynote? Because is anyone going to admit to not having seen the keynote? I do have a 2-minute summary. Should we play the 2-minute summary, or should we'll do the...
Coming to a pocket near you.
Hello.
The Siri AI glow-up hits the small screen. See Siri AI in the role of a lifetime, your personal assistant. Ask Siri AI anything and revisit your conversations with ease in a new dedicated app. Watch Siri AI embark on a quest to provide nutritional details about your meal. Yummy. Cheer as Siri AI handles every detail of your soccer watch party. Go! Siri is giving main character energy and puts the personal in personal assistant. See next generation Apple Intelligence extend, reframe, and clean up your photos. Booyah! Create photorealistic images and flex your imagination everywhere from contact posters to fun wallpapers in the all-new Image Playground. Safari has never been more organized with topics or timely with Notify Me. Rest easy knowing your data is protected as compromised passwords are automatically updated with just a tap. And see Apple Intelligence stand guard to protect your privacy. A faithful sentinel, keeping your private info private. With Siri and Apple Intelligence, your data stays protected. All this and so much more. Coming to an iPhone near you. Sweet.
Sweet. So you saw at the end there, he swept past a whole lot of features. I took a few stills just in case if people want to yell out one of their favourite features maybe that came through. Does any of these appeal to anyone? Has people been waiting for the new parental controls? Is that what the one you've been most wanting maybe? Dual capture and FaceTime. There's a lot of things here. Anyone? Anyone?
Full resolution sharing and kickoff photos.
Yes, full resolution airdrop and the sharing and shared photos. Yep, that's a good one. Yep, there's some nice, they've added some really nice things in here. Support for 4K cameras in the Home app. That's, I know a lot of people have been waiting, even if they've got the supported cameras, now the home automations do it. But when the keynote came through, they did spend a good quarter of an hour talking about parental guidance apps for children. It's a great feature that they've been supporting. But in fact, there was nothing new there for the developers. It's a bit of a criticism that took a little while to get to the meat. In fact, there was only one change to the API, and it's a deprecated API. So all this stuff was introduced last year, and it was a good example of why you might want to adopt these frameworks, but nothing new. So that's really all I'm going to talk about the keynote, because we wanted to talk about Siri intelligence, which was the meat of what was happening, and this is where we got to see some of the new things that are now possible. Things that have been promised for a little while and really finally delivered in a really interesting way. The first really interesting thing about our foundation models now, is the image. The models are now multimodal. They can accept not just text input, but also images as input. And they can generate text output or images as an output. So you can generate fancy looking images, and you can also pass it images and ask it to do analysis on it. It now has this incredible personal context. So everything that's been collected locally on device is put into this semantic index that Spotlight and other things can search across, and Siri itself. We also have a much smarter model, both on the device, which it knows all about common things. I don't know if you've seen some of, I'm sure you've all had a bit of a play with what was introduced last year, but the basic built-in model seems to know about everything. It's got a whole lot better, and now we have the option of going off into the private cloud compute and using an even smarter model to do random things. And app actions is the ability for your app to perform, the system to start controlling things that are happening right within your app. The ability to perform work in your app, that's what I had there. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about the keynote. I know other people focus on the keynote, and I'm really not going to. We're going to start talking about what happened in the State of the Union and beyond. And the first thing that happened is Josh, he had a really cool quote. I wrote it down. Together, in-app and system-wide intelligence unlock experiences that neither could deliver alone. Your apps made more powerful by intelligence, and intelligence made more meaningful by your apps. And when he said that, I thought, that's a great quote. And I think it's a lot of the sessions that came out sort of showed how these things work together. And we're going to go into some detail about that. There's another cool sheet of exciting things here. Nice curves on the edges of the windows, all sorts of things that they showed off. But let's look at the tools to start with. So Xcode itself, the new Xcode is really smart and a whole lot cleaner. When you want to create a new project, it's a much simpler dialogue that pops up, and the first thing that happens is it takes you straight into a code editor and you can start writing stuff. You don't have to go through and think about all the extensions and think about what app ID you're doing and signing and all that nasty stuff that you definitely have to do eventually. You can just get straight into building something, and out of the box it's got a preview and you can start talking to it. Up the top of the screen we've got our ability to bring up a new assistant panel where you can start talking to this agent to do work on your behalf. And here's the first thing that they're doing. They've got a new code base, and they're asking the agent, summarize the data models and the view hierarchy of this particular app. And it goes through and does all this analysis of your code base. This might be some new code that you're just picking up. And it has references to all the different files that it's doing, that it's found for you. So you can use this to acclimatize yourself with a code base you might not be familiar with, or maybe it's from past you and you've forgotten how smart you were at the time. So it's a great way to get an overview of where you were. And then you can put into a planning mode where you can start asking it about the features that you're wanting to add. So it could be visual, GUI related things, or it could be logic about how you're building everything. And you can iterate on this and build up a really detailed plan. The on-device agent can do some really smart stuff with coming back and asking you more questions, verifying, how do you want to do this, and can make some suggestions about different options you might want. So you have this conversation with the agent locally, and then when you're happy, you press a button to say, go ahead and implement the plan. And then you sit back and you watch it compile the code. It might find errors. You can see it's going back to the documentation. The documentation's all indexed in a way that these models can access now. And it writes all this stuff on your behalf. It's like magic. I'm sort of probably a little bit late to this agentic coding, but I've been using it a little bit the last week, and it's surprising how once you trust it a little bit to do the work for you, it is amazingly capable. One of the new things that we have this year, instead of these simulators, we have this new device hub, and it really changes things in some interesting ways. One thing that it has is it's sort of a central way of keeping track of your physical devices and your simulators. And so now when you run on your own device, you do get to see it running inside this device hub as well. And you can easily play with the different options about the accessibility type things, about whether it's light mode, dark mode. You can even stretch the windows and see how they're going to behave for unknown reasons. That I'm sure we'll talk about it in the panel that's of interest. But yeah, you can see exactly how your devices, your app's going to rotate, change over time. Another really interesting thing they have here in this device hub is this ability here to, when you're building up your simulator, you might be building a lot of code locally, and in its documents folder you might have cached some files, and it might not be working on your device or on your simulator. You're able to package up the contents of your container and send it off to someone else who can restore those contents into their simulator and can see an exact match of exactly what your device was doing. So you'd match your device, unload the contents, and it's effectively, they've passed their machine to you. It's a really, really cool feature. We've never been able to do this, I don't think. I don't think I've missed it. This is cool. I think it's really, really handy. I want to cover off some of the big changes that have happened with Swift and SwiftUI. You really now have to use the new scene life cycling. If you've been doing the old things with app delegates, that really you can't use the new Xcode and build for 27 if you're still doing things the old way. Things like the size classes and the idioms where you said if it's on an iPad do this, if it's on an iPhone do the other, that sort of goes out the window as well, because the size of an iPhone can't be guaranteed. If the iPhone app is running on a Mac, it still says it's an iPhone even though it could actually be using a bigger screen. So using those as your clue about things you might be doing with the size of your app isn't the way to do it anymore. This is interesting. An iPhone app now has the option to specify how you want the sidebar to behave. So in the past, it was an iPad and Mac feature where the sidebar could morph from a tab bar and things like that. Now on the phone, if you've got your device in landscape or your phone's wide enough, you can choose to have a complete sidebar popping up on the phone as well. And of course, when you see this on a Mac, you can stretch the height and have a whole bigger screen. Oh, I love that they fixed up some of these UI things. I wasn't actually a big fan of the way the sidebars were sort of nested inside another view for no good reason. And the same with there's a couple of UI elements that I think have been tidied up. Everyone's raving about the new icons, how nice and how sharp everything is now. I think there's some nice little UI tweaks across the system. Of course, there was the changer we can now do to say how transparent everything is. So some nice little GUI changes. But here's a feature I know a lot of people were begging for, was to how to get a tab bar to have that same behavior like the search bar does, where it had a dedicated icon alongside all the other icons that always stayed there even when it collapsed. You can now specify any tab bar to be the prominent tab bar. And so if you've got like a plus or an add or a mail, you know, when you're composing something that's sort of a generic function that sort of you want absolutely everywhere, there's now a way to do it. This is a bit interesting. We've got this new reorderable elements inside SwiftUI. And so we've got a way now to very simply, instead of just having lists that are reorderable, you can have collections. This is the first time that on watchOS has had any kind of reordering. You couldn't do it in lists before. Now you can drag these things around with that single modifier. So that's some nice little quality of life changes. Here's some other things. The swipe actions are no longer tied to being within a for each loop. They can be contained with any other type of containers. And here we got it sitting inside a lazy stack in a scroll view, and you can sort of decide who the parent is of that's going to receive those notifications. There was also a new navigation transition style. I think, was it just last year we got a style last year. There's a new one this year, the crossfade. So you can choose, instead of a navigation bar, you know, a presentation sort of sliding up from the bottom, you could choose it to perhaps fade up differently if it makes sense. And here's another example where they're using the agent inside Xcode to do the work for you. So if your code base is out of date, maybe take a snapshot, but you could ask the agent to say, modernize this app for 27 and tell them that you want to particularly use the new whatever else you're trying to act on, and it'll more than likely do the job for you. It's scary. If you love the way that the agent works, because it's really smart now, it understands how SwiftUI works, and you particularly want to use some other development tool, some lesser tool, I do love Xcode, you could ask Xcode to export the skills file and use it elsewhere. So I don't know if anyone's compared these to Paul Hudson's work, because I know he's written an agent for doing SwiftUI stuff as well, a skill. But yeah, this side of things is actually a little bit new to me too, so I'd be keen to hear what people do with that. That's the developer tools. We're going to talk a little bit about app intents. App intents, I've been waving the flag for app intents for a few years. It was in 2022 they were introduced as a new way to sort of replace the way that we were doing things with Siri intents, with that ugly file that you had to embed inside your app. So it's all in code, and you can define 3 parts to these app intents. There was a session also in 25, but the ones in 22 called Dive into App Intents, and there was another one called Getting Started with App Intents, I think. They were both fantastic. And these fundamentals haven't really changed, and it really has, every iteration of the OS has built on what's possible with app intents, and they're really a key part of the kind of experiences that people are going to expect. The 3 parts are the intent, which is almost like the function within your app, the action that your things are doing, and then the entities are the nouns, the things. If you're writing a cooking app, they might be the recipes, the elements. So the entities, the things that could be indexed into the semantic index, into the spotlight search that could be going everywhere, and the intents are the actions that you might perform on that selection. Shortcuts is really a way to sort of like a sentence to create a collection of entities and apply some functions to it. And you might do it in shortcuts, but now Siri itself can start mashing together a set of objects and particular actions you want to perform. So once you get things inside a shortcut, they appear in all sorts of other parts of the system. And these app intents are what drives the new Siri experiences, what makes shortcuts work. It's behind everything in Spotlight with all these intents. And it's even the way that widgets behave. I thought I had widgets. There was a session on widgets. I think I referenced that a little later. But even the way when widgets are configured is all done with an app intent as well. These app intents can be associated with things that are happening across the system. So if you're running a workout and you're running some kind of workout app, if you've got an entity that represents that workout, you can associate it with that workout session. And so then when you finish your run, I wouldn't know about running either, but if you finish your exercise, I don't actually know about any kind of exercise, but when you finish your activity, if you were to say to Siri, remind me to repeat this on Thursday, it would know that you're referring to that particular entity, that particular session, and that can be passed around and shared across apps. It's really quite powerful. You can also attach these entities. Oh, no, we've got other things in a moment, but this is the long-running task. So entities can now be asynchronous and run for a longer time, and they can return a progress indicator of how things are changing over time. So you no longer have to think these are just a tiny piece of code that has to execute in a fraction of a second. You can be a long-running task. What gets more interesting is the features when you've heard about the on-device intelligence, understanding what's happening on screen, is because you tag views with particular entities. So as an array of jobs are passing by, you can associate that particular entity with that element, and so it can effectively know what's passed on the screen. And that's how it knows about emails that have happened, because it saw them go by, tagged it with an entity, it can see all the related metadata in the index and do magic. Here's another place where we can attach entities to other things that are happening across the system. So playback controllers. So this is if you're doing this example is showing you when you're using NS user activity, or the new way of exposing an NS user activity. If the thing you've got on screen is all related to one particular entity, you can associate it saying this particular user activity is refers to the whole screen. Maybe this is my workout, or this is the recipe. It's not the individual ingredients. So you can have an entity that refers to the whole page, or you can have entities that relate to elements within a row, individual views. So one's the whole page and one's individual views. And you even got a way of referring to items that might not be visible on screen, but you're giving the system a way to instantiate instances of those entities based on an identifier. So you can have a way for it to pass you an identifier, and you can return the fully fleshed out entity for it to do something else with. So even if it wasn't visible on screen, it can become aware of these things. User notifications, so if you're creating notifications locally and you're doing who knows what with it, you can say this was triggered from a particular app intent. So if you were wanting, because then you could have this conversation with Siri saying something goes off, and you say, look, I want to do that tomorrow. Instead, it knows, oh, this entity now has to be scheduled for another time, or whatever it might need to be. It gives it a way to give it this context about what you're doing at any one time, and you've got these rich data types which you define that could be passed around the system. So cool. Same with the media playing services. So if you're with the Now Playing, you can, if you've got a particular track, or if it's a podcast or some kind of audio, video, you can say this entity represents that item, and so you've got a way of sort of passing it around to different products which might play sound or display audio or pictures or whatever it might be. Same with the alarms. I haven't really used there's a new alarm kit. I think it was last year it was introduced, a way to have reminders come right up on the lock screen. You can associate entities with those as well. So all these little ways that people are interacting with things when they're using the device day to day can be associated with these entities. They make everything happen. Entities make the world go round. So here's these actions. Whenever your app, so you've got your app intent has got the entity, and it's got the perform handler. It's got the action that it can perform. And when they run, they can either return a success, or they can return another intent, or they can return a fail, like perhaps it had some missing data or had some ambiguity it needed to check out. So that's how you have these conversations with Siri, because you're saying, I want to try to run this transaction. I want to pay $5 to John, but if I didn't say an amount, that might be a required variable, and Siri will say, oh, I need to know the price, and you can have this to and fro. So your your action can sort of give clues back to the Siri engine whether it's not a fully fleshed out intent or whether it's ready to go. And then those get passed around. The other thing that's finally here this year is that we have these schemas. So I see this being a lot like how the old Siri intent themes all used to work. I can't remember the word that was used for them, where there's different domains of interest that have a really rich understanding about how you deal with this data. And so you can write a series of intents that map closely to one of these services. Like if your app loosely is like a messaging app, then it understands all manner of ways of saying I need to send a message to John or tell John blah blah. It knows that means send a message to, and it needs a recipient and it needs a content. And it can have these rich conversations that are very open-ended about the language that you use to it. I'm not sure how many languages are supported. I know it supports New Zealand, so that's all that matters. So, but if you've got one of these app intents that you can have these rich interactions with, and it includes things like search, there's phones, messaging type-based ones, reminders, all the sort of common things. There is a suite of intents that you can map to called an app schema. So your one is totally free form, you can do what the hell you like, but if you are mapping to one of these app schemas, you get the advantage that you've got these richer interactions. Although even the app intents now are a lot smarter because you've got natural language ways of querying all these intents. There was the session here validating your app intents. There's an app intents testing framework. So there's a whole session on how to test your app intents. One thing they did suggest, a good way to deal with these is to do things inside shortcuts itself. Because shortcuts is, you can ask it to give me a list of data of type order, whatever the data type is, and it should bring up a list of them inside there. If you've got a text representation of your intents, this is how you can see that everything's working in that way. And here's this is the way I'll be showing the related sessions. Widget kit foundations. It's interesting that they're repeating the widget kit talk. I'm reading stuff into that these widgets are going to pop up in even more places before too long, and because widgets have this ability to be actionable, and they're actionable because of app intents as well. And they can have these snippets that appear everywhere. This is a widget with a configuration type of an intent configuration type. And so things like you might have an enum representing the possible options that you have on a particular parameter inside a widget. Just like when you say, I want to show weather for a particular country, it's going to be an app intent, and it passes that app intent around with the configuration, and you can go off and get create the particular views that you need. Actionable notifications and widgets all depend on these app intents, and they're part of the live activities. And live activities had interesting changes here, and that it can also work on a device that's in landscape, so you can have these very narrow views. And so there's a new way of even querying to find out yet another one of these environment things that you have to peek into. But you can say, does the dynamic island support having more than just an icon? So now it's something you can check for. This is where it gets really exciting. Do we need to breathe on one? Just need did I bring some water? I think I had some water. I think I'll be right. We just looked at the LLM providers. Last year we introduced, Apple introduced these beautiful models where you can just say, I want to create a session to a large language model. I want to pass it a string. You wait a moment, back comes something live. So this is, it became it was a piece of piss to create a chat type app. I don't think that's the phrase that developer relations use, but it was so simple. 3 lines of code, and you can send something to a model, run it locally on your device, no tokens used, no cost, and it's got even smarter and faster this year. It's unbelievable. Now you can just say, instead of just doing it to the default model, I just want to use the private cloud compute. Everything's still working?
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, look at that. I did actually plant this prop. It's a WWDC 06 drink bottle. Yeah, sorry.
Is that a prize later?
Yeah, no, it's not the prize. Yeah. So now it's just a matter of when you create your session, you can say, instead of just creating it with a local model, I want to be using the cloud model. And there's a free tier of how much you can use before you start getting charged, but that's on the client's cost. But at least it's there and it's more powerful. And so we've got this sort of abstract way of talking to these sessions, We've got the local one, we've got the cloud one, but wait, there's more. If you import the core AI framework, you can create a reference to your own models and use exactly the same syntax to create a language model pointing to this other model. That might be one of your own ones that you've trained and get the same kind of responses. So a common way of talking both to Apple's local model, cloud model, or any damn model you can imagine that you've brought in there with core AI. This is a simple slide, but I love the fact that we've got this amazing privacy story with the models on the Apple platform that regardless of what one you're using. The device on-device models running offline is, I'm not sure if it's unique, but it feels like it's only people that are really caring and doing a really fantastic job in this space. All that stuff can run without having to go off to the net and do anything or pay any money. Private cloud compute does have a cost, but you've got these high thresholds. The bigger context window, we've got a 4K model. I think this year's one, I think it was 4K last year, but it's supposed to be, it's got more parameters, or it's got more stuff. And the one in the cloud's a whole lot bigger, and it can handle reasoning as well, which I don't really know much about, so we can hear from someone else maybe on that one. So here's an example of creating a model, creating a prompt where you're passing an image as the input. And this is the kind of thing that you might want to do if you wanted to generate a caption or try to understand what someone's uploaded, just to see if you've asked for a passport and you said, does that look like a passport? You could ask the model to sort of say, oh yeah, no, what it is, or if it's something vulgar, you could probably check for those kind of things. Here's another example where they've passed it a picture of what's in their fridge and they say, what can I have, what's for dinner tonight? And the other thing that's fantastic, this was the same as last year. These foundation models, if you haven't used them, a couple of the key things they do is one is this idea of tools. And tools is based on that context, what is it called? Model Context Protocol, MCP. There's too many acronyms. But it's that idea of creating a function, a utility that a model can query to do something else. So you might create a tool that can go off and do something with weather. And that's been extended a whole lot, we'll look at in a second. The other thing that these foundation models do is that you can define a type that you want the response from these models to be forced into. So it's not just going to give you a block of text. You might tell your model, I want you to generate a list of article summaries from all these things. And it's not just going to return you text, it's either going to return you an article summary or nothing at all. So if it doesn't map to that, it's not going to be a response. And so all of a sudden we've got a way to have a predictable response from the models that the questions that you're sending to a model. So here's a common one where you might be going off and hitting some remote web service. These are all asynchronous, so you might get called multiple times as and when the model determines that it needs to get some help from you. And here's another one where you might be doing some image analysis and trying to determine what it is that you're looking at. This is the way that you would in fact do it, with saying, here comes, pass it through some image recognition engine and send the results back. But you're a tool that the engine will use if and when it decides it needs help with things. The Vision framework has exposed some of the functions that it's doing as tools. And so the things that we used to have with barcode reading, which was something the Vision framework can do, you could pass it a frame from the camera and say, what is the barcode in this image? You now have that as a tool. So now if you were talking to your large language model saying, go and collect all these things, and if you find out what products you're doing, if it sees a barcode, it goes, oh, I know, I can go off and, because when you generate this, I think on the next slide, I've created the barcode reader tool as one of the tools that's available for it to do. I might have passed it a weather tool and a barcode tool, and all of a sudden the model knows how to deal with how to find that barcode, as well as find stuff about weather, as well as do all that common things that it can do out of the box. Spotlight search is another one of the tools that a model can use. And this is really powerful. This means that you can tell the large language model how to access your unique data types. So you don't have to do your own search type things within your app. You could just create a free-form text search and ask the large language model saying, if they've asked for a list of recipes, I want to get a list of recipes, it might go off to the web and might do what it likes. But if it knows you've got your own data type of recipes that are sitting inside Spotlight, it can return references to those, and then you can start playing with those and passing them around to whatever you need to do with it. There is now a new command line tool for foundation models, so FM foundation model, and you can use this in any way you can imagine, and you can even create a session to it and start doing back and forward. It's quite powerful. there was a brand new evaluations tool. So I haven't really built up any of these kind of models, but there's a term called hill climbing. I don't know if maybe you're all familiar with this, but it's the idea of when you have a model and you're trying to assess how good it is, whether or not it needs to, I think here's some clues here. You can ask it how relevant the response was from a particular query, and you can give it rules about how to rate itself based on the kind of responses it gave. And you might have other things where you're giving it how to judge whether or not it was accurate or whether it was ambiguous or whether it missed the gist of what you're doing. And then you can create all these charts. And so you can send these models away and you can give them rules about how to assess how good they are and hopefully tune these models to become better. So there's now tools for doing that. And the foundation models, cloud-based foundation models, can now be executed directly on an Apple Watch. So you can, here's something that's creating a whole lot of data from the watch. You might know about collecting how many coffee you've had. You can go and ask the private cloud compute, do some shit with this information, and out comes an answer. It's awesome. The other thing that's really cool is some of the vision framework functions are now available right on the watch as well. So in the past I love doing stuff about the vision frameworks on Mac and iOS, but there was frameworks for saying show me QR codes, but you can say show me the saliency of this image, show me the area of region on a particular picture, and in this one it recognizes that this is the thing that would either move or have some life. And so you could have this code running directly on a watch now, where you say, grab an image, tell me the region of interest, I'm going to crop, maybe this is someone's face, and I just want to zoom in right on the face, not on everything else. And so now you can have an app on your watch that when they click on an attachment that who knows what's sent, it's just going to show them something relevant instead of just a tiny, unusable thumbnail. So really powerful stuff coming all the way down onto the watch. So cool. That's app intense. We love it. I'm going to talk about...
out in the bush somewhere, and app on your watch, you put it on the animal and goes, that's a red eye tree frog?
If only the watch had a camera. No camera, you need. But if you had a picture, then it could be. Now it could. I'm not sure. It can definitely run sound analysis images models locally. I'm not sure if there's image processing models. I think Apple TV can run image classification models. I'm not sure if the watch can run image classification. Not sure. But you can definitely run them on things that you know, like Apple TV, which you wouldn't immediately think it would. I love Vision OS. It's there was a lot of talk going out that it was going out the door, but there was quite a bit of love went onto the Vision, and it's I've been using it a little bit more this last week now with the new system. It seems things flowing a whole lot nicer. One of the things that's interesting that we've had this before is you can have a three-dimensional model of an element that might be in your physical world, and you can pass it through the CreateML app, and it creates a reference object so that when you're inside an AR session, and this can be on your iPhone or iPad, and if you've created a model of this, and it sees that in the physical world, it becomes an anchor, and then you can superimpose other elements relative to that. So if you, and the example here is they're doing it with a globe. Well, at the moment he's doing it with a handpiece, and so it can now see exactly where this piece is in the space, and it can track it in real time. And it's now doing it at 30 frames a second. It used to be like 5, I think. So it was a bit clumsy. And now it's like a high precision instrument. So really, really quite cool. They gave you another example here of like using a flashlight. And so they created a 3D model of it, ran it through the CreateML app to create this reference object. And then whenever it sees that, it can create where it is in space. So it knows its orientation and where it's pointing. And this was a fun example, is they used another feature that just came out on the Vision Pro, where it can actually illuminate, or look like it's illuminating, cast light onto real-world surfaces. And so here, they've created the reference object that was created in CreateML, create a reference to that file, because you can just export it straight into Xcode, and say, that's my reference object. When you see it, do something. And now look, they've moved this torch around, and it looks like it's lighting up the room. So the torch is physical, the picture is physical, the light that's affecting it is an illusion, lunchtime doubly so. What's cool here is there's other ways that you can do tracking as well. So you don't have to be, because you can anchor things on an image, you can anchor things on a 3D object, you can anchor things on these new type of elements, and they emit infrared light, and they have some other kind of gyroscope, and I think there's some other kind of sensor, I think it's ultra wideband. and you attach them to things. So here's like a steering wheel, and they attach this beacon of sorts, but a highly positional one. And so then someone can sit down and they can physically hold the steering wheel, and it's exactly where the Vision Pro thinks it is, and then everything else is faked around it based on that relative position. Really, really cool. So we've never had a way of this is based on the same technology as those pencils that came out last year, and the PlayStation controllers that sort of map around your hands. A lot faster mapping and tracking than you've been able to do just with your hand tracking. And now you can have it with third parties, and they've opened it up for anyone to create these. And there was a session on how to create these accessories to put in your own devices. Here it is running on iOS. So iOS also takes advantage of this faster tracking. Look how fast this thing spins. It knows exactly where that is, and it looked like it was open up inside. They're superimposing a model on top of a physical item, and it knows the orientation in real time. So cool. So that's Reality Kit, got a whole bunch of new things. There was a great session on Explore Immersive Website Environments in Vision OS, which looked at not just Vision OS, but how to embed 3D objects inside Safari. And they had this great example of looking at it on a website and seeing what your seat's looking like. But of course, on the Vision Pro, it's like you're in the theatre. So that was pretty wild. Reality Kit and Reality Composer Pro, we've gone to version 3. So Reality Composer Pro now lets you do a whole lot more than you could before. So Reality Kit itself is sort of the rendering engine. It replaced Scene Kit. It now understands how to render things like materials. So they've got really naturally flowing materials, which is pretty cool. It also understands how to do this Gaussian splats. So the USD file format is Apple's been working with all the big names like Lucasfilms and Pixar and all the big movie companies, and they're getting Gaussian splats as part of the USD file format standard. And so this is how the 3D imagery works on the Vision Pro when you see each other's faces. But now you can use this to render elements in the physical space as well. And that was just done from effectively, instead of having a geometry that's got a texture on it, it's almost like spots of light in 3D space that have different transparency elements. And when you put them all, if you get enough reference points, it looks like a solid object, but it's not using a mesh at all. It's like magic. Reality Composer Pro finally gets all the things that, I don't know if any of you used the tool in the past called Quartz Composer Pro, remember that? Where you could sort of set up all these rules and you could nest sort of structures and conditional things. We've got all this stuff now inside a properly supported tool, and it's an extension on Reality Kit. So you can just open up one of these files inside Reality Kit anywhere except Watch, SawPoint, and but you can, and then you can do magic with it. So here's a simple example. Here's a not so simple example. You can have triggers and actions and logic. Everything you can do. So there was a great session called Design a No Code. I've lost it. Design a No Code. I can go back one. Game with Reality Composer 3. Really cool session. He takes you through step by step, and it was a designer, and he creates this little tool where he can pick up a nut, and as he moves it around, it swings around and follows it. The app itself, the apps can work quite standalone, and they can trigger based on relative positions. You know, if you click here, then this is going to do that, and then it's looking at the target and things like that. But you can also have messages coming from the Reality Kit scene, like a broadcaster say they tapped something, and inside Xcode you can be listening for that message. And so the Xcode and the Reality Kit file are really tightly integrated, and you can pass stuff back and forward. There's some nice things happening with when you're representing things in big wide views. They turn into like a round monitor. You get multiple tabs. So there's at least a couple of people here with Vision Pros. You know, you've got a Vision Pro. Yeah, Vision Pro gets a few people get to use it. They're really, really cool. And even if the Vision Pro hardware hasn't been a massive success, I think the OS is just amazing, and it's obviously going to have a longer shelf life than the first product we've seen that came out the door using it. But I love the Vision Pro. It's really cool. Here's an example of this thing where it's projecting light, and so you can see it knows how far away the walls are. There was one with a disco ball as well, and so based on as it moves around corners, it does all the appropriate things. You can see light is being cast off the virtual element onto your tabletop. We even use this, it's used in things like the Siri, the little orb that you talk to, you just look at it and talk, and you can see it's got like an opposite of a shadow. It's like a little source of light, and you talk to it, and it does stuff. It's really is like magic. So that's the spatial computing bit. We're going to finish up with some odds and sods. There's another new framework, music understanding framework. So there's the ability to pass it an audio track. It will tell you its tempo. You can even break down which instruments are being used at what places. So if you're trying to, time something to generate, like I'm guessing the Photos app must do this, because it always does such a great job of, when it creates a memory, sort of getting everything hitting the beats. This is the way you do it, using a framework like this. So it breaks down what tools are available. You can choose to mute and do different things. Super cool. There was another new framework called, if you search for channel sounding, it's a new ability of, in Bluetooth we used to have this RSSI I think it was, a way to determine what their signal strength was, relative signal strength indicator. It's a way to sort of figure out how far away a Bluetooth element was, to sort of do a poor man's version of like a beacon. This is a whole lot smarter in that it sends these messages back and forward, and it has a repeater, a reflector, and an initiator, and it's able to determine with higher accuracy how far away this Bluetooth element is. This depends on devices with the N1 chip in it. So it is currently limited to just the iPhone 17s, I think, and maybe the Air. I think it's the Air's got it. So it's interesting that the hardware is doing more than just what other Bluetooth devices are doing. There's some other changes that's happening inside the Vision framework, where you can do this really smart way of choosing multiple, finding this subject of interest, and it just cuts that off the background, and you can use those as masks to do different things. And you can add to it and say, I want to include this and the other. We won't bother talking about the OpenAI stuff, but it is a little bit cool. So USD is a file format that is a way to sort of encapsulate everything about a 3D scene. You can now inspect that scene and attach elements to items within that scene and move things around. Here they open up a whole document, and they open up a second USDA file, and they position the oscilloscope on the table. So they're able to say, here's a USD, here's a USDZ, here's another USD, and I want this position here at this angle. You can start combining these objects, and so it's a file format that you can actually have code that's sort of driving. Interesting. Spatial preview, this is now a spatial preview framework. I think this is new. Last year they talked about how a Mac app can project stuff into a Vision Pro screen. This is the framework that does that kind of stuff, and it's now open up for more things. And they've made the Now Playing framework is they've rewritten it. It used to be the music, the MP framework. You had another name, which you could do very similar things. But this perhaps sends off alarms that maybe there's going to be more ways to show Now Playing than there is already. But it gives us this new way of responding to controls that might be happening on like a HomePod speaker. If they're changing things, your app can sense that and do things based on controls. I can imagine how an app intent might be doing something, passing something back at one day. It's interesting that this whole thing with widgets and Now Playing is all coming together. Another whole new framework, Pass it's an app, Pass is and a framework, Pass Designer. So creating wallet passes was a bit fiddly in the past. It was just this XML document with was it XML or a plist? I can't even remember now. But you have to sign it, and you've got to name everything exactly as you needed to. Now you've got these beautiful templates, so you can just do it all in a nice GUI, and you can do it all in code. And they showed an example of writing a Vapor app that was doing this on your behalf. So it was quite a good little demo. A couple of changes to Swift Data. I know there's some people playing with Swift Data. There's a new way to do a query where you can have it so it's sort of sorting, grouping by a particular index. So you can create these indexed items with no extra code really, which was nice. It was quite a bit of mucking around in the past. You've also got another way of, instead of only having SwiftUI views that can be sensitive to things that are happening with selections, you can create a results observer. So you can have some other controller that is listening for changes in the database and doing things there. It doesn't have to be tied to a view anymore. There was a framework for helping with creating subtitles and maybe translating things from one language to another and building up your own subtitles in there. And I think this is one of the last ones, the container. So last year, Apple introduced a container framework, which was sort of like like an open source Docker, a way to virtualize machines on your own device. You can just create, you can say, you know, you can create, you can have a Unix box and a Mac just sitting there, sitting in terminal, and you can pass work through the thing. Seems a little bit magical. The new thing is that you can also create these configuration files about how you want a virtual Mac to be started up and what kind of guest access it might have. So you can just do this stuff on the fly now. And this was another one where they did an example of sharing data between the Mac running Xcode and the Linux box, which was running Vapor, but they had a shared directories, so they were able to create assets live on the Mac, and the Vapor just had to refresh for the web browser that it was serving, and had access to the same content. Definitely a good one to watch. I think this is sort of a lot of geeky developers love all this virtualization, and this will be the last stuff. There's some new things around CarPlay. Every year, every so often, they add another way to do things with CarPlay. Australia's an interesting market in the corporate space where there's more CarPlay apps made in the Australian market than I think like 90% of all CarPlay apps I think came out of Australia. It's a big number. There's a lot of interest in using the screen that's inside these vehicles in business, and police and different places are using them. New this year is that you can now serve video content, so everything's template based in CarPlay, and now there's this new way to do bring up templates when the car's not in motion. You can pass things back. There's other things in CarPlay where it's now able to send more information back to the vehicle as well about location related stuff. This might be the last one. Shortcuts. There was a bunch of new things in shortcuts. A few interesting ones is that when a screenshot's being taken, that can trigger running a shortcut. When a keyboard is attached or detached, can be triggering a shortcut. And the notification one is cool. And do I have to hit go? I'll hit go. When I receive a notification from this particular app, if the message contains this string, do something. So it could be, you could be waiting for something in particular, and when I get this message from this app, do something. You know, and you could be running other intents from other app. You could be reusing the built-in things. You could have it trigger a whole new workflow. Really, really powerful. In fact, there's a new thing here in Shortcuts where you can ask, there's an agent inside Shortcuts where you can say, write me a script. And at the start there where I got it to read out the terms and conditions. I wasn't even sure if there was a way inside Shortcuts to save a string as audio. I wanted to save it to a file so I could just throw it inside Keynote. And I just went into the Shortcuts app and says, I want to pass you a string, convert it to an audio file and save it to disk. And it went chug, 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 chug. And it says, what's the string? And I pasted in the copyright message, the free, you know, the terms, and out popped the audio file. And I said I want to be able to change the speed, and it gave me the control. It was super cool. You can also choose exactly what model you want to forward things to right inside the Shortcuts app. So you could get the local model to do stuff, or you could get other models there. And finally, Shortcuts has the ability to even store data, like AppleScript used to do back in 90, whatever it was. But now you can have persistent data inside your Shortcuts. Now that was everything. We just skimmed past the keynote. We looked at what's some of the new things we had there in Xcode. App Intents is really core and what makes all this magic happen. We still love Vision Pro, a few odds and sods. But there is one more thing, because this morning they dropped a new video. Special presentation. Have you all seen this one? This came out this morning and they had a live presentation to the keynote attendees, to the attendees in the Steve Jobs Theatre. And they covered off some really cool stuff. They showed how to use agentic coding to generate a whole app that had some really cool Swift UI interactions on it. They showed this fellow here doing more stuff with App Intents, where he was doing translation. And they called out the importance of giving the operating system hints about when you perform different intents. So I think it might be a couple of years ago, they sort of said everything inside your app should be an intent. And when you execute some code, you say, I'm actually executing this intent. And then the operating system sees the patterns of usage and starts recommending it in the lock screen in different places. This fellow went through how to set up sort of a complete framework around these foundation models. This guy looked into the evaluations framework and how he used it to train a model up. The session goes I think the session goes longer than the keynote. It might have been 90 minutes. And he was doing other stuff here. Now this guy was the final one. He was looking at the MLX framework. And I did like this slide. Info goes in, magic comes out. But the last thing he put up on the screen, and this is the last slide, he showed how you can create a whole cluster what do they call it? Distribution computing. A whole cluster of Macs, and they're all connected via Thunderbolt, and they multiply the amount of processing power you had. So he ends up with 1 trillion parameters running locally on your Mac. No cost to run this at all. Really cool demo. And when you see him prancing around, he looked like a super villain, which reminded me of another character who's a bit like a super villain in exactly the same pose, because he was thinking, if I had $1 for every parameter, I'd be a trillionaire, and there he is. So that was everything I had. Hopefully you picked up something. I thought the CEO was a great one. Lots of things to try out, and we're going to have another beer, and I think then we have our round table.
Thank you very much, Peter. This takes 5 minutes, so if you need to use the toilet, do that. There's beer in the fridge. I think the heater's all gone. I'll see you back in 5 for the panel. Thank you.
That's
forgot my name. I'm not on the panel, technically. I am hosting.
Do you have a mask?
Yeah, cool. All right. Probably, well, we can share this one, and we can share the other one. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We're back with part 2. So we've got a panel discussion on all things WWDC. So we'll start with an easy one for the panel. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you work on.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Sergio. I've been a developer for 6-7 years. I started as a manual tester 15 years ago, and then moved into automation, and then moved into coding. So yeah, in automation, I went from Visual Basic to C# to JavaScript, and then finally to Swift. And yeah, I have 2 apps myself. One I just released like 2 weeks ago, and the other one I built it like 6 years ago, never touched it again till 2 months ago. But yeah, that's me.
Oh, sorry.
You can share that one.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Hello, I'm Peter. You met me earlier. Long-time developer. I've been working on Apple gear since the 80s. Started with the Mac Plus, and then commercial writing stuff on the Apples all the way through. So I had a bit of a head start when the App Store came out, and I put out a few apps. I think there was 450 apps when the App Store opened, and I had 4 of them. So that was sort of early success. So, but yeah, been doing stuff in the enterprise space a lot, and working with a lot of developers all the way through.
Thanks. Well, I'm Christian. I work at Baloo and I'm currently being contracted out to Qantas, so I do work with Sergio on some things. We have the joy of working together. On that, like I've got a few apps on the side as well. 2 of them are not in the store anymore because time. I've got one project which is a sort of Danish betting community company, which we're trying to get something really good up and running, and I'm very, very attracted to all of the sort of vision intelligence things because we've got a lot of sort of OCR reading, machine learning, that sort of manual processing, and it's not great. So I'm really looking to improve that, and just Apple keeps releasing awesome stuff in that area. So yeah.
Cool. Well, it sounds like Christian might have answered the next question, but do you have a favorite announcement from WWDC?
It's a hard one. So I've only been able yet to watch the keynote, and
I'm sure I can actually hear your voice from your mouth. I can't get from the speaker.
yeah,
It's for the stream.
It's not working.
you're not meant to. It's for the live stream.
Yeah.
So, but I will speak up.
I'm just a bit old.
That's all good. So, my favorite announcement from the Dub, right? So, I've only been able to watch the keynote and the State of Union, so I've not dived into all the session, and I've realized now how much there is. I think the main 2 sort of themes of the keynote was obviously, AI or like Siri AI, privacy, security, and all that, and then just like the design, the improvements, the speed, stability, bug fix, and all that sort of things everyone talks about. It's the next sort of Snow Leopard release where they do a year and just make it better, or in some cases make it work. And that's been and obviously when you release a big new design system and all the things that came, like there's going to be little bugs here and there, and certainly has been. So, but I'm particularly kind of happy with the unified roundedness of my corners now. So I do like that, and I'm in the same camp as you, like that sort of raised sidebar on Mac. I kind of liked it, but I feel like it should have only been on the right side where you have that shadow. So now I'm happy. So I think I don't have a favorite announcement per se, but I think the focus and the emphasis on privacy is going to be a real winner and competitive advantage for people building on the Apple platform. And I'm quite happy that they're really continuing down that path. So, Peter.
Yeah, I'm glad that, because I think I yelled out finally. As we know, the App Intent stuff was promised a couple of years ago, and it was. I've always sort of seen the value in it, and it's so good to see it. Finally, they all come together, and we can really see how these things really sing when they're all there. So I'm impressed that it works so well. It's not. I was concerned that even when they announced it, I thought, I hope it's in the first beta. I hope it's not sort of this them putting it off, and it's there and it's magical. Some of the as you use it, it's really elegant. I don't know if you've played with it on an iPad, but when you bring up the new Siri, you've got this really cool UI when you sort of stretch down the bloop. It doesn't make that noise, but it probably should. It's all quite liquid and fun, and it's it's really maturing. It's looking good.
Yeah, mine doesn't work. Just to dig a hole in your statement.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely all the AI stuff. I'm still to try Siri, and it's still indexing all my stuff. And the Siri, I'm still in the waiting list. But one of the things was the corner radius on the Mac. I was really happy about that. And the other one is on SF symbols. You can now, it has semantic search. So you can do something like, if before you had to search for a speaker and it will show you all the SF symbols that have a speaker on as the name. But now you can search for sound and it will get the context and it will give you those SF symbols. So I was like, whoa, I'm really happy for that. So yeah, it's like a minor one, but I was a big woo from my side.
Yeah.
So was there anything announced that made you think I need to get to work straight away?
All the acronyms that are coming with MLX and the core AI and all that. I was like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff that's coming on that space, and Apple is really pushing into all the new stuff. Well, I guess they have to after 2 years of promising. So I was like, I need to get my head around of all this stuff, all the new concepts that they are presenting and that. So yeah, I think that will be my focus.
I think the thing that was realised I've got to pull up my socks a bit more was all around the agentic coding stuff, because I had a I tried it a couple of months ago, and when it was and things have evolved so darn fast, and it sort of went down a rabbit hole and created some really bad code, and I lost all faith in it, and I was sort of almost slow to adopt things like automatic reference checking, because I like to retain and I like sort of keeping a handle on things, no pun intended, but the with reference counting, so it's sort of it's almost a step of faith to use some of this agentic stuff and let it have access to. Look, I'm still too scared to open up all the agents and tools where it has free reign over your whole computer. I'm not ready for that kind of stuff, although it sounds like it's more contained than just a free for all. But it's I'm sort of having to let go and trust.
I don't know, right? Like the question is like, is there something you just want to dive into? And again, I have not seen a fraction of all the content there is, so there probably is something, but if anything, always there's around this time, like as exciting as it is, I'm also always so overwhelmed because there's so much, and where do you start? Agentic coding, and like it's something that probably a lot of us have been looking at for a time. I do want to kind of swing a question back at some point, but I suppose I'd go with vision, intelligence kind of things. That's the one that's most relevant for me right now. And I think the whole I did a talk with Bilou a few weeks back where I also touched about this subject of on-device intelligence, where it's really only Apple that's it's not only Apple that does it, but they're the only one that sort of again sell it with this element of privacy. And I think it's really key, and it's so incredibly like devices today are so powerful, you don't really believe how much they can do. And I think, from my point of view, what you need to think about is all of those assumptions that you used to have when you were building apps, like a lot of those are gone now in a way, where you think, we got to have a backend because that's the most powerful thing, or we got to start, like, every feature needs a backend, or we need some sort of server to communicate with, or like we need to send data back. No, you don't. Like, you don't now anymore. Or it depends what you're making, of course, but there's so many things you can do on the device itself and start there, which are fully private and free, which was not mentioned, right? Like, you could do it for free. Well, it costs power, but that's about it. So I just anything on device really has me at the moment. I do want to shoot a question back maybe to the three of you, because when we talk about agentic coding, I'm not seeing Apple necessarily has done something new yet. Not that they have to, but I do wonder, maybe not just on that, like, do you find Apple is a little bit of a game of catching up, or do they have what could be their edge, like in being ahead of, just tools like Claude Code, Copilot, whatnot? Do they have an edge?
Maybe. I'm sort of late to the agentic stuff, but there was a great demo where they were using it for doing UI iterations, and they went through about how to word the prompt to create like 10 variations of a particular design they were looking at, and then they were using it almost for inspiration. And again, it was sort of sandboxed in that they were making sure that it was in this sort of design phase. But he says, I want you to create 10 different previews with separate names, and then you get to see them all on the screen. And then they were mixing and matching the features they liked from it. And so they were just using it as a bit of a sounding board. And I think it was the fact that it can generate all this Swift UI code and you can use it as a design inspiration thing, I think it's pretty cool. I'm probably not familiar enough with other tools to be able to know if that's unique, but it's nice to see.
Yeah, as you said, Apple is not reinventing anything. It's not presenting new stuff that we haven't seen in other companies or other services that are already offering. I think the big advantage or the edge that Apple has in this case is the ecosystem. And because now they are putting in pair with what others have, but they have the big ecosystem on the back where they can basically, they have you in the iPhone, in the PC space with the Mac, in the home space with your HomePods and your Apple TV and all that. They can integrate and make so much sense of now have agentic AI, because the more info you give it, the more useful it is. So because other companies are really trying to get that level of hardware in your pocket to be able to capture that information, and they're not able to, like OpenAI is trying to get the device, and just like that, that's why they're working with Johnny Ive and all these big names. But Apple has that benefit, and now catching up with the others, I think that's going to be very interesting to see in the following years. So yeah, I think that's the big advantage that they are getting for.
And then, and Apple's sort of often not leading in these things either, but they just got.
It's not about being first, right?
No, and if they just have to bring across all these millions and millions, hundreds of millions of users, and they're creating useful, like some of that stuff that's in photos this year is so cool, and when you can reorientate where the photo was taken from. And I think there's more of a focus on sort of useful things than necessarily being, I'm sure someone else has got a demo that does something even cooler, but it's not in everyone's pocket.
There is also some controversy about that photo stuff, because there's the question of what is a photo now, and it's like it's Apple playing with so much stuff and like gimmicking or just constructing these images that are not really representation of what you really capture. But yeah, it's just
there was a lot of conversations in the sessions. I think they were choosing their words very carefully about making sure you're always in control. You have the choice, and they were trying to keep on framing it that gave you the freedom to decide what you're doing, but you always had the final say. Yeah. And they said that a lot. There is because I suspect if you have a little less knowledge, you could depend on it and get yourself in a mess. So it is, you do have to know what it's generated to know whether it was right.
That's right, yeah. And that's why it's coming back the old days when blur photos or non-perfect photos are coming back into social networks and stuff. So you prove it or you show it that it's a real picture that it took. And it's like, oh, interesting that we're going back to that just to show that it's real. So.
So it came up in a few of the sessions. Apple said something along the lines of, Xcode is the best place to build iOS apps with agents. And, they've said many times before that Xcode is the best place to build iOS apps. That kind of came across to me as though they know people are using other tools and maybe other applications to write a lot of code these days. But I didn't feel like there was a lot of justification as to why. So I wanted to know kind of what your AI development workflows look like, and do the changes to Xcode this year impact that at all? Like, is it the real deal now?
Well, I've been in WWDC. It's my first year that I've been there. So I've been in one session that was really, really nice. It was with the guys who work on Xcode. And they were showing us the new Xcode 27, and they were doing some demos in it, they even called it, vibe coding or something like that. So they were really embracing that. And it was interesting to hear from all the questions that people were asking. And you can see that those questions were coming from other IDEs, like, oh, can you select a plan option, or can you select ask, can you select agent, can you choose your model, those type of questions. And Apple was, or these guys were like, yeah, we have this and this and this. And they even said, we are not trying to copy what others are doing. We are trying to see what really benefits the developing side. But I don't think Xcode, for myself, for what I use, I don't think that, like, for example, they don't have the option to select the model. So for some things, I want to use like a very heavy, extreme high model to do the work, but some other things I want to use the mini and the very basic one, and they don't have that option. So I was like, oh, okay, they're lacking on that. So definitely I won't be moving to Xcode if I have to do something like that. I will still be using Visual Studio, which is the one that I choose to. But there was one thing that I was going to say, can't remember, but yeah, can just continue. It'll come back to me.
I'm just an Xcode guy. It makes my skin crawl to put anything Microsoft on my back.
And they even said that yeah, they're improving Xcode, and one of the guys said, oh, why you didn't, why I have to clear the drift data every time? And they say, oh, that's a bug. We definitely don't want to encourage that for you to go and have to clear the drift data because it's not doing something. But then I noticed that Xcode now has the option to clear the drift data, and they say multiple times, we are not encouraging you to do that. And if you have to do that, it's definitely a bug on our side, and you have to raise it as a feedback. But then I saw that they have the option, like, quite clear there, below clean build. So I was like, interesting. Okay.
I guess that answers what my favorite feature is.
The clean data.
So your question was like, what is Xcode's edge, effectively, right?
Is there an edge? Yeah.
I think the answer to that question is students. So for us, like, I'm old-fashioned. I love a good CLI as anyone else. I usually, would use Claude and whatnot, or I'm in Copilot in CLI, or like Terminal. But when you're starting out, like your education, or you're new to the scene, like, and to be fair, like Xcode's interface, and it's not perfect, but it's great, and the agentic experience, is really, really good. And it obviously has the benefit of being, it has all of those quote-unquote tools and your project context and all that built in. You don't need to first set it up or install plugins or tools and all that. And I think for students, for learning, similar to Playgrounds, it's being able to open it up and it's just there and it works and it does. You don't need to first, how does quote-unquote AI works? What are MCPs? What are tools? It's just there. So I think that's the edge, like just getting started. And ultimately, you want to just put out your ideas onto, I was going to say paper, it doesn't work like that anymore. But I think that's the edge. It's just user-friendly.
Yeah, nice. So Christian, you mentioned it before, but Apple had a bit of a focus on privacy. Was that in the context of like foundation models and AI and stuff?
I mean, not just that. It's obviously, I think it's necessary to really hammer down privacy when you are doing a lot more processing of people's personal data, i.e. photos. And now with the whole, new search and indexing, all that, like it's really getting everything in so you can find what you need. And I think I'm going to quote Apple directly from what I found when I was preparing for mine. Like you are able to now, like, well, you have been for a while, but you are really able to build really personal experiences without collecting people's personal data. And I think, on-device intelligence, and as devices get more powerful, and especially now with foundation models and all of these things that it can do on-device without anything leaving, that just speaks to privacy. And I think going into it with the almost requirement that we do privacy first. I'm going to sound like a sales thingy, but like I really think that is a key way to differentiate yourself these days. In that, plus it's like a lot faster. Like take photos, right? I've got 20,000 photos in my library, and it's been quite a few years where you could search up pictures of, not just dogs across all your photos, but it knew which one was your dog, what his name was, when it was born, when its birthday was, like, because it could just collect and deduce that on device. So there's so much potential, I find. But
I can see that as a, it's very brave from Apple to do that privacy branding thing, and they're like, even like, it's like their identity now, and you can see like the Apple logo with the lock, and it's like, whoa, that's part of their identity now. So they are really taking serious of that, which I think it's very, very risky, especially nowadays when you see this like, oh, data leak, or there was this thing that they discovered that they were getting your data, and they were using that to train their models and all this stuff. So it's very risky from Apple, but because they're making their brand, and that's why I'm like a heavy user of Apple.
yeah, so it works.
I don't have any other thing on my house. I don't want other speakers to hear what I talk. Like I really trust of why they are selling, because I can tell that it's not their business model to sell you data. You're not the product in that sense. So I was like, oh, that's very risky. And they are going heavy now with the models and stuff, saying it's private, it's yours. And because we have, again, all the ecosystem that they have so much information about not just you, but about the people that you talk to, and what information you are sharing and you're getting. It's important.
As an ex-Apple person, I feel I've been triggered, and whenever I hear the word, I've got to say, Apple believe that privacy is a fundamental human right. Sorry, I just had to get that one out. But just to play devil's advocate a little bit, once you push your entities into the spotlight, they're a little bit removed from your app. Is that right? And so I sort of think that's a little bit of a it's a little bit of an exposure of I think you have to be a little bit consider what data you do put in the index, because I think it's available to when your app's not running, you're not really conscious of when that data's been queried. So that's just one thing, just to sort of you still have to control that.
And that's one thing that we were talking earlier with Christian and other guys. It's interesting with all these app intents and everything that you can now serve from your app to the system, basically. That it reminds me the old days when you were building websites and you were doing all this stuff to be well positioned in the search engines. So we're doing all the SEO and stuff just to be a top one when someone searched for something, and you were like basically doing the same. We were surfacing all the information to the search engines. So now we will be doing that to service the information to the system. And what happens now? Even if you have like a beautiful SEO, you are never going to be at the top of the search. At the top of the search now, it's an agent that is basically getting your data and serving the information from your data without you getting that traffic. So I was like, that's going to be interesting for companies who especially want you to go into the app, because by you going into the app, they can just sell you other stuff. By now, you just like going into Siri and saying, yeah, just give me my flight number, and the Siri will give you the flight number. So you don't need to go into the app and check your flight number or what carousel you have to pick up your luggage. So that's going to be interesting. And I don't know how that's going to be play out. I don't think companies have much option, or things to say like, no, we don't want it, we are not going to serve that because the company is going to, and people is going to have that in Siri. So yeah, I don't know. That's gonna be.
So I think that's a really good point. Also across websites, like now, like I run a blog too, and like you notice that traffic hit when the first thing people really look at is that sort of AI summary or references, and it's really helpful a lot of the time. But it just means that way of getting people to your website or app doesn't really work anymore. Or it's harder now anyway. And I do also think that with app intents or Siri intents or app actions or whatever it's called now, like iOS and Android across, I think probably a few years out in the future, but I do think we are sort of moving towards a time where you don't actually write an app for the UI, but you provide actions to the system, and then almost the system or even your users can generate or create the UI they want. Like, I'm going to talk Android because they have a nice example of being able to generate sort of custom home screen widgets on the fly, taking data from the apps that you have, but then creating the UI, and you just have it. Like, you don't need an app that provides that widget. Users just generate. I'm sure Apple would. I'm surprised they didn't actually announce something like it yet. But things like that, where it's not so much about creating apps for the UI, but more providing the data that you can do.
So shortcuts is a tool that sort of bridges across these different app boundaries. And you could say, go get these calendar entries, and then I want you to get the list of dates and find the smallest one, and then chart them using this tool. And you're passing data across applications. And I don't know if anyone's created, but there could be one that queries health data and does something. Potentially these things could leak, or they could be used in, with great power and all that.
Yep.
We've been told for years to, build your app intents and kind of expose all of your app's actions to the system. But I would argue probably until now it hasn't mattered if you've ignored that recommendation, but is now the time that changes as a result of this year, you think?
Yeah, as I said, I think you will have to. If you want for people to consume your stuff, and the other companies are doing it, you will have to go and service it. There's not much you can do. And I think that the same example with, for example, app clips. App clips, I still think that it's a beautiful thing to have, but companies don't want to have like a small version of the app on your device. They want to have the full proper app installed on your device and live in there on your screen, so you can access whatever you wanted to access.
It's supposed to be the gateway drug to your app.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So if everyone start adopting app clips, I guess you are forced to adopt app clips, but I think that's going to be the case now with app intents. Everyone will start adopting app intents, and you will see these brands, the next app update in the App Store will be, now we integrate with Siri. And you're like, oh, okay, now I'll have to do. But yeah.
Comments?
No more comments. No.
So I think that's sort of the flip side to the privacy story, right? Yeah. I don't think it's going to change yet, or ever, or I don't know, because as much as now you've got privacy and you've got all these cool features, the problem is it also makes it really, really hard to track how many use them. Are they valuable? Are they profitable? Which means that it's really hard for the people that actually make the decisions on what goes in the product. Is it worth adding? And until something changes in that way of thinking, it's really, I really only see like, sort of proper indie developers build those kind of things in, because that's sort of being a, what's it called, like best-in-class citizen of that platform, and getting that to your users because you see the value, but probably most people don't. Or to be fair, if I ask my mom to, can you go make a shortcut or like what an app intent, like she wouldn't know, of course. So does it change now? I think it can do a lot more, and I think it's great to look into it. I hope you can convince your business to do it and invest in it. But it also gives Apple a responsibility to play that role in having people discover it and showing you can do these things and show it really well. Otherwise, it's like not really gonna. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna catch on, but it's not gonna reach its potential, right?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts. I do think these app intents and separating your interface with the actions that can perform and the data it deals with, it leaves it open for, and it sort of follows on from even like with Swift UI, with our declarative UI, where you're really describing the relationships between the data, and you're leaving it to the operating system to figure out how to render those things. So like the fact that you might, if you needed to pick from a list of things, if you're doing it on a watch, you slide a little slider. If you're doing it on a Mac, you might have a pop-up list. If you're doing it by voice, it might read you things out. You say, give me the second one. And so you're telling, I think more and more we're starting to describe the types of actions, the types of functions, and how they relate, and the way, and it leaves it open really for Apple to innovate and create new ways of triggering these actions. So at the moment we use voice and UI things, but there could be things triggered by your vicinity to something. And some of this we're sort of starting to see glimpses of with Vision Pro, where you can put a widget on a wall, and just by standing closer to it, it changes what's shown. And I think there's going to be more of this kind of stuff where the way that you interact with things might trigger functions and actions and things. So I think we are, we're just telling it the relationships and letting the magic happen.
So will users or your average user want this, or is this a power user thing? Like, when do we kind of pass into that point of, our parents using it, for example?
Well, just one follow I can do first while I got the mic. That thing I did with the shortcuts, and I didn't know if you could do it in shortcuts. The one step beyond that is to know that you didn't even have to launch shortcuts to do that. If I realised that I need to use shortcuts to say I want to convert this some text to a file and put it in Keynote, if it just did one step more, I wouldn't have to be conscious that it was using Keynotes to do the work. And so we're getting down close to just your wish is your command kind of thing. I think it's getting close.
I don't know what the boundary is. Yeah, like it's there's so much potential that anyone could really use it, but again, it's up to the system to expose it and let people discover it. But also, again, coming back to saying it's very overwhelming. There's so much every year to catch up. And yeah, we can introduce this and that and that and that, but it takes most teams a lot longer than a year to even get through all these and even get it up the priority list. So that's why I think you could say power users or like indie developers, because they are already, I don't know, it's quicker for them to iterate and get these things in, so it's quicker for them to try it out. But I think that's a big slowdown. But yeah, I don't know the answer.
I do see my mom using this type of stuff in terms of, because now you have Siri, and Siri is more in a chatty way. So I do see my mom going into Siri and asking all sort of things and waiting for it to come up with a response. And by asking those things, it's just like trying luck and trying to see if Siri can find it. Otherwise, I'll have to go into my mails and go into my messages and stuff. So I do see my mom using it and trying the luck in this new way of how Siri is presented in a chatty way. And so, yeah.
So speaking of kind of new experiences on the iPhone, I think it's pretty clear there's going to be a new form factor of sorts at some point in the kind of near future. What's your plan for adopting this? Will you start kind of trying to get your app ready now, or you wait till it's announced and see what Apple actually says? What are the thoughts?
Bit of a loaded question, isn't it? Are you thinking of foldables or like what's?
Sure, let's go with foldable. Yeah, foldable.
What are we looking at? Because I hope they won't. I don't think I would use it. I'm sure they will. There's certain markets where it's certainly popular, or whatever that sort of device would look like. But I mean, the device hub they announced was really, really cool, building on top of the sort of iPhone screen mirroring things, and you can now do that with your developer devices and simulators. Like it's really cool. It's a nice sort of fluid environment to work with. I don't know if it's necessarily such a big argument or evidence that they, might release a foldable whatever.
You live in denial. You're just like for months. You're like, no, they're not going to.
Someone knows me too well. I'm not going to buy it, but who knows? I don't know. But then again, we don't really have to do much, right? Because ever since I was 8, we had the new sort of constraint system. Probably before that, even, right? Maybe 6 even. Yeah, whatnot. Like, and so or the
5S or something.
Like device classes and size classes, right? And all that. So if you are currently using that, you really do not have to do much.
No.
You get a lot for free. It's of course a different story to sort of optimize your UI and whatnot to those devices. But I think it would be, if you already have that for iPad,
yeah,
you probably don't need to do anything really. Depends what they might or might not release. But so.
Because the iPad has everything from when you're sitting side by side, you pretty much got an iPhone that's too tall, and you've got so many different aspect ratios, and they definitely giving a lot of hints to allow for it to, because now a rotation is more of just the thinking of the dimensions changing rather than orientation, and everything's just all about make sure you're flexible, and you've got all that size that fits as well, so you can sort of have a design that tries this. If it doesn't work, you can fall back to something else. There's a lot of hints to sort of don't assume any aspect ratio, form factor, anything. So if you're a good citizen on iPad now, like I said, I think you're good.
I don't think it's necessarily a hint at any new device, but I think they're really trying to put emphasis, and so is Android, to that sort of resizable fluid interface where you build your iPhone app, but then you can also pop it on your Mac, and it's expands, and you can put it in whatever size you want. I am surprised that they added sidebars on landscape iPhone, and it was like, that doesn't really seem to work very well, does it? But maybe there's a bigger plan, who knows, or just for consistency. So we'll see. Clearly not yet.
Just one thing that I think that Apple hates, it's you have your version of the app for iPhone, and your version for the iPad is just a bigger one. It's just I think something that Apple has been pushing for a lot of time is iPad is not just a bigger version of your app. It's like a different version of your app when you can offer more stuff because you have a bigger screen. So by introducing these like fluid, don't fix your components to a specific size and try to make it more fluid. I think they're going into that space. So just don't offer just a bigger card, a wider card. Just offer like 2 cards on side by side instead of one on top of the other one. So I think that's more of what they are trying to say. But yeah,
we're really killing Zach's dreams now.
What?
Or do you wish for a foldable thingy, or?
Oh, I'm indifferent. I want to know your thoughts. Look, in the interest of time, I'll throw it open to the floor now. Anyone have any questions for the panel or anything you want us to discuss? Yeah.
Just wanted to know, as you gentlemen, how does Siri AI compares to the other triad AIs like OpenAI, Anthropic AI, and I think DeepMind AI? How does Siri compare to the other 3 AIs?
I haven't tried the new Siri. I watched some demos and some people using it live, but I think the biggest factor from Apple is the on-device stuff that they can run. So I know that they were saying like, but they are just supporting the latest device, iPhone 17 Pro and iPhone Air. It's not the case. They actually presented 5 models. They have one model which is the new version of the AFM3 Core, which is the new version of the Foundations model. They have the AFM 3 Core Advanced or something like that, which that one is the bigger model. That one is the one that needs a 12 gigabyte RAM device. And that's the one that it's only running on this iPhone Pro, iPhone 17 Pro, iPhone Air, and a few others, like M3s, M4s. And that's because they have, I think in the basic one, in the core, they have like 3 billion parameters. In this other one, they have 20 billion parameters. And that requires a bigger RAM. And to make it faster. If they put it on the SSD, it's not ideal. They put it on the RAM, so you can action with those faster. And they have like all these papers that they were presenting like months ago on how they are making those big models, the 20 billion parameter model, snappy and quick as any other. And I think that's the magic behind Siri, and that's the magic of what they are presenting and compare with others, that you can run stuff on your device for models that live on your device. And if you need more heavy stuff, then yeah, you go to the cloud computer, private cloud computer. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys say?
I mean, I don't think you really should compare them, right? Like Siri AI is not a chatbot in the same way as OpenAI and Claude and whatnot. Like it's limited in that sense. It's not a general purpose one, as far as I know, because it is primarily on device and sort of focused on your local content. I may be wrong, but
by default, you're talking.
yeah. I mean, you can do both, right? But it's, but in terms of like it's now building on Gemini models, right? So in terms of what it potentially could do anyway, it should be on par with, OpenAI or Claude or whatnot, right? It comes down to the model, which by themselves are always going to be limited to when they were trained. So, I think if in that whole AI war, like what might differentiate you is sort of the ecosystem and tooling around it, not necessarily the models themselves. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I haven't done side-by-side comparisons either, but I tend to sort of a bit of an AI slut. I try them all. Is that a thing?
Yeah, a slow one.
I try them all, and sometimes I throw things at one and see what it comes back with. And it sounds almost fun just to compare what they come back with, but just see what I think the idea that you can run a lot locally and not have to pay anything, because it's the worst is when you sort of hit your credit limit. So I think it's fun that you can just play with it. I suspect more people are going to use Siri, like the same way people just Google every damn thing. I think people are just going to reach for this. People will be using it all the time. I think it's going to be. It's surprising how I've seen a lot of people that have been using the local small model that we had last year for doing very varied things. It seems to have general purpose knowledge on. I don't know how it even does it, but it seems to be super useful. Very functional for lots of things. Even the basic one, and it's only just got better. And now you can ramp it up to the cloud. I just think it's a great story, but yeah, maybe it's not going to be as good as a commercial one, but it's based on the same designs. I'm not sure.
Like a funny thing, I have an app, and the app is to find playgrounds around you. I have a 3-year-old, so my weekends are all playgrounds.
On Swift playgrounds?
No. And I added foundations model, and I wanted to, for the foundations model, to, based on the playground, say something like, where are coffee nearby? So it looks like it's very smart, but it's not really using any of the models. What it's actually doing in the back, when you ask something like coffee's nearby, it's actually using an API, which is MK location or something like that was presented
Point of interest.
iOS 6, yes, point of interest. And that it's feeding into Foundations, and Foundations giving you the answer. So it looks like it is coming from AI, from Foundations model, but it's not. It's something that you can basically surface on UI and yeah, they are doing those type of.
But you use the model to do the reasoning.
To do the reasoning and to get the responses and to make it look like a nice UI thing. It's actually giving you as a markdown. And one of the guys from the office, he was like, "Oh, it's a markdown. Can you make it look pretty?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. I make it look pretty." And yeah, but it's not really Foundations model that has locations nearby or something like that.
No.
But in the back, it's using those old APIs.
Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one. It's a big question to start. I'll give you a bit more research background on it. So I guess the big question is are we going to get replaced? And I guess this comes up from multiple interactions and multiple seminars. And one of them was, even tonight, watching the Apple, I watched that video as well, where they're showing how to create an app. I think one of the scary parts about that is like groups like this, of developers, we have a rule book, where out there's a whole group of people that don't have a rule book. And so if they can create an app, then they're happy with it and they'll move with that. And so maybe our apps with AI will get better to the point which, once again, back to that first question, we could get replaced. And I guess a sideline question to that is, I'm hearing that sort of developers in large development sets have soulless code, which is effectively where people are dumping code in and tech leads and that are going, too much code, you're dropping that in, it's coming straight from AI. So what I'm seeing and hearing is it is actually something which is happening even in our ranks. So once again, it's sort of, if it's flowing through, it sort of makes you start to think, well, how far will it go until we are replaced? Because I know business would like to replace us, because if they could just do it themselves, they wouldn't even bother with us.
Yeah, I think no, it is a big question, definitely, and you can get very philosophical with that question. And I think it's a concern from all of us in the market. It's like, as soon as you start using any agentic AI, you're like, wow, you get very surprised. They're even like writing code that you're like, wow, what is it exactly doing? And they're like asking you to explain you, like I'm a 5-year-old. That's like trying to understand what they're doing. So it's like, oh, this thing is going to replace me. But I've been in a hackathon on last Wednesday, and they gave us like a new shiny tool to build native AI apps, using AI. And they gave us 3 hours to do an app, to do a concept. And I saw these young guys, like 20-year-olds, not even out of uni, and they were like magic in prompting. They were like writing the prompts and everything. And after 3 hours, I was just still downloading Xcode 27. I was not able to come up with a project. And they have like full-on apps they were able to present. And that's where I was like, I don't know. I questioned myself. I think code got very cheap now, very, very, very cheap. But the concept of building a lasting product, I think that's where we're still safe, and getting that architecture and everything in place for just not be a slappy thing that it will fall off as soon as there is a new update. I think that's where we are still safe. But code, it's getting very cheap. Yeah.
Well, that's sort of part of what I was saying. I was thinking as well was that maybe we need to start changing the way we do things. Yeah. Maybe we should be thinking about how those people are doing it, so we get fast at that, because otherwise we will be part of the dinosaur set.
I do remember, I remember when that third generation languages came out, they said we don't need any developers anymore because it's so easy. Then object-oriented programming came around, and so that we do get these scares a lot. I think they were the same stories were coming out. This one does seem scarier. I'm not sure it's just because I'm older and now it feels like, oh, that one's more threatening, but it's but it comes around all the time. I think there's going to be always need, maybe they're going to get better taste, and but there's still I still think I hope it doesn't just turn into the kind of things where what do you call it when you go to those markets where artisan, where there's it's sort of, oh, how quaint, you code by hand, like knitting or something. Yeah, and
use a quill.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to turn into that in a hurry, but it's sort of, I do wonder what advice you'd give young people now. Like, oh, I'm not sure if I can be as confident about what the future might be over the next decade. Well. Yeah, it's hard to know. I don't know.
It's always a hard one, right? In short, I think the answer is no. You don't have to worry. I'll try to come up with some sort of analogy example. It's a really bad one, but really bad one. 9 o'clock. It's just straight on alarm. I don't know what that is. When we got interface building, you no longer had to sort of build UIs by using frames and code and whatnot. Did that replace any jobs? No, just a different tool, right? So, and it's a bad example, but in the same way, I feel like today, you can still do it as you used to if you want to, right? Like, that's not going to change, but I think the sort of requirement or expectations to what that sort of career looks like has changed a little bit. And yeah, if you don't sort of look and are curious and sort of adopt other tools, and you don't have to agree with them, but use the tools that are there to improve the way you do work, maybe you'll look like a dinosaur, who knows. But yeah, you're not going to be as ahead as a 20-something-year-old that can just vibe code something in the speed that it takes to download Xcode. It's a weird, sure. You use that as a measurement. And it takes shorter. But at the same time, and that is challenging. Like, it's always challenging to learn something new, especially if you have to. But we always have to, and we should not resist that. It's just new opportunities. I was resistant at first. Like, it took me a good year before I even sort of wanted to even use, ChatGPT and whatnot to even ask questions. And I was like, when I started realizing what it could do for just, simple autocomplete or now agentic coding and whatnot, it was incredible, very surprising. But at the same time, I don't want to get to a point where I need to rely on it. So it's a tool. But it's also proven that you put shit in, you get shit out. So you still need to know, what are you trying to build? What kind of problem are you trying to solve? It can solve the problem for you. It can write code. It's good at that. But like, you need to know, what are you trying to achieve? What's the outcome? What looks right? What doesn't look right? You need to feed it example of, this is what we're looking for. This is not how to do it. You need to train it, so to speak, in how to do the work right and the way you do it or the way your company does it. So you really still, it's a great tool. It can speed up a lot of things, but you need to teach it how to do those things, similar to hiring a junior developer and teach them, this is how we do things. This is how you learn. This is where you go to look for information. It knows a lot more. Yeah, but it's a tool. I don't know if that answers it.
I'm sure we'll migrate to other stuff. It's like part of evolving. That's the way I see it. Like, for example, back in the past, you used to have like a lady that come home and they wash your clothes by hand. And you pay for like every 5 clothes $1 or something like that. And then the washing machines came up, and it's like, okay, so they are going to lose their job. The washing machines are going to replace them, just like another tool. So I guess that's part of evolving. As Christian was saying, you code, that could give you code now. But the thing of like understanding the market, what's the problem that you're trying to solve, what's a lasting product, what's the target, what's your business plan and everything. I think that's where the experience really will still be a thing. And we were talking with one of my colleagues. It's like right now we are shifting into a more of our reviewers than writing code, and that was actually the fun part of it. Like, my first app, when I built it like 6 years ago, it took me like 6 months, and it was like a crappy app. It was like really, really bad, very basic. And this last app that I did 2 months ago, it took me like 2 months, and it's like really polished, and you see it's like, whoa, beautiful code, beautiful view, UI, everything works. And so that's where I realized like how everything changed, but I had way more fun on my first app than on this one. And so yeah.
I really wonder, and I mean, I could probably ask, but that feeling or fear of like, are we going to lose our jobs and whatnot, or what's it going to look like? I think that comes out of being afraid of not being in control anymore, where it's just like, oh, it just goes and does it for me. But like, you still have to tell it what to do, right? So I wonder if it's that, like, do you feel like you're not actually making the product or like in control of what comes out, or because it's not like that. Like, it might put out something good, but you can still do whatever you want to it, right? Like, Apple-wise product, and so it's a tool. I don't think so. Like, it's just as when we got cars, it didn't necessarily replace horses. It was just a different tool for us to get around town or the world. And horses are still around. They do something different, but yeah. So it's a big question, but yeah.
It's a good question. I think there's a whole panel just in that.
Well, Apple's embracing it now, right? So it's pretty clear. And if you can get the download, the latest version, and it's LLMs based solely on that, it's going to be far quicker than us going through all the videos and remembering it all and applying it. So if that's in play, right, and then the AI becomes good enough to actually write really good code and work off all the design patterns,
I mean,
it becomes pretty serious, right?
Yeah, no, it is capable of writing really good code. And you know, set it up right, it can do everything for you.
In one of the labs, that was exactly one of the questions. One guy asked to the Apple engineer, so now you're embracing this AI and coding with AI and everything. How or what would you recommend for us not losing the capability of coding? And they said you could use the same prompts to like quiz you or to teach you what it's doing and those type of things. But you have to be you have to really be willing to not to lose that side and not go into, because the other joke that was going around, when you go into plan mode and just like build this feature, blah, 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 and it will give you the huge plan, markdown plan. Everyone's like, oh, read the 2-3 lines and then just implement. And but yeah, try not to do that. Try to read the whole plan and try to question the AI, and so you will not lose that reasoning that you currently have by having to solve the problem. But yeah.
I think there wasn't a lot of code on the slides in the WWDC sessions this year. Certainly a lot less than normal, and there are a lot of sessions about prompting, so it's telling.
Well, that's important. How to get in front of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you got to kind of read that if it's coming from Apple. Yeah. All right, I think we're going to leave it there for the panel now. So thank you very much to our panelists. A round of applause to them. And thanks to everyone for sticking around. We hope you enjoyed tonight, and thanks again for Peter as excellent WWDC in review. Hope to see you next month and get home safely. Thanks for coming. Thank you. That was really good. Oh, awesome.